Hi, my name is Al Green. Not that one, but the struggling guy who was in the music industry for years trying to sell talent and songs to agents. The agents befriended me and taught me techniques that I want to pass on to you through my program, which is called You Can Talk, You Can Sell. Anyone who has ever taken this program has excelled in selling and either risen to the top of their company, their team, or the top of their field. It's called You Can Talk, You Can Sell, and you can get it right here. Who is the best salesman that you've ever seen or that you've wanted to copy after? Was it somebody that talked really good or somebody that had a way of getting the attention of somebody they wanted to sell to? Years ago, I was lucky enough to run into an appointment that I had with a company to see the owner for selling them some equipment of the kind that I used to sell. At the same time I was walking in, another finely dressed gentleman walked in who was a very, very dapper looking person carrying a briefcase. And as we walked in together, we sat in the lobby waiting for our prospective appointments. And basically he said to me, "What do you sell?" So I told him what I was selling, the kind of equipment. He said, "That's an interesting line." And then I asked him, "What do you sell?" He said, "I want to show you what I sell. I think it's very interesting because you might be able to give me some leads." Nice segue into getting referrals. Anyway, that's something that I talk about, is getting referrals. So I walked in to him with him. He basically motioned me to come and follow him. And as a result, when I did, he approached the owner sitting at his desk. And I took a seat behind him. And he walked up to him and he said, "My name is Bret," and then he gave his last name. "I'm sorry, I don't remember it." And he goes, "And I want to ask you a question, very quick question." And the owner said, "Go right ahead." And he said, "Well, how secure is your bookkeeping system from fraud so that you are not losing any money?" And basically what happened was the owner said, "Well, we're pretty secure. We check everything." And he goes, "Do you ever put checks in the mail?" And he said, "I'm sure my bookkeeper does all the time." He said, "Do you mind if I show you something? This is going to really blow your mind." So he said, "Do you have a canceled check that you could show me?" And the owner called in the bookkeeper and he said, "Would you mind going into your file and grabbing me a canceled check from, let's say, last month?" So the bookkeeper ran, came back with a check in hand and handed it to the owner. And he goes, "All right, I got a canceled check right here." And he asked him, he said, "Do you mind if I look at it?" So he looked at the check, and he had a set of fake checks in his wallet, like he had a folder, and he opened it up, and there was some fake checks in there. And he wrote out a check to himself, Bret, whatever his last name was, to the tune of $10,000, and he wrote it out, and then he signed that owner's name. And he copied his signature perfectly. And he said, "I want you to know before we begin that I am a convicted felon. I basically forge checks against government accounts for millions of dollars. And I paid for it with several years of my life by going to prison. When I came out, I couldn't get a job. However, I did manage to get in touch with this security company. We have a system that will not only secure you from this happening." And he handed the guy the check, and the owner looked at it and he was absolutely in awe. He goes, "You copied my signature perfectly." And the guy said, "That's what I do. And that's what plenty of other thieves do that are targeting people like you who have businesses that are worth millions of dollars." And the owner said, "What are you selling?" And he said out loud, "I am selling you. I am selling you a check security system, and a type of security system where you will never, ever have to worry about checks being stolen or being forged against you." Now, this was before the days of digital checks and digital deposit. Everything was done manually. In fact, in those days, when you wrote a check, It had to be cashed at a bank, and the bank would cash the check and then void it out. And when you got your monthly bank statement, you would get the checks in the mail. If you don't remember that, there are some of you that will remember that. We would get checks in the mail of the checks that we wrote. And a lot of times that was very helpful if we're balancing our checkbook and we see a check we forgot to enter. But sometimes if there was a false check, which happened to me one time, somebody had taken one of my checks and they somehow changed the name of the payee and cashed the check. Now, in those days, it was a little bit tougher to find him as well, but I was victim. So he was selling him not only one of those systems where you have a machine that stamps the signature in such a way that it cannot be duplicated, and the checks were completely controlled, and they were not issued without a pre-authorized stamp, which had to be in the corner of each check that the bank would see. And you would have to notify the bank and tell them, if you get a check from my company that doesn't have this insignia on it, it's not a legitimate check. Anyway, the system that he sold him was $10,000. And the owner didn't even bat an eye. He simply said, okay, I'm going to get you a PO for it right now. I want that. Can you get that to my office today? And the guy actually said, yeah, I can, but the system is something that you need training for. I'll send out a representative, but I'll need a check right now for $10,000. So he told the bookkeeper to go issue a check for $10,000 and he would sign it. So the bookkeeper came back with a check, and Bret said to him, do you want me to sign it? He goes, I guarantee you it'll clear. And the owner said, no, that's okay. So he handed him the check and the purchase order. And Bret walked out with an order. And I swear that the whole thing maybe took 6 to 7 minutes. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there as a witness in awe of this. And as he walked out, he said, Al, why don't you come with me? And I said, okay. And I went to the owner and I said, I have an appointment to see you. Can I come back? I want to go talk to this guy. And he said, absolutely. So I followed Bret to his car, and he showed me all of the orders that he had taken that day. And there was a stack of orders, and he was flipping pages with purchase orders from companies that he walked in on a cold call. Now, that was the best salesman I ever saw, because he probably sold a minimum of $60,000 a day. Now, I can't imagine what his commission was, but because he had this incredible talent, he used it for his sales ability. I've seen other people that have special talents that use it for their sales ability. I saw one particular salesman that also walked in to a company, but he had a different kind of a talent. He basically was looking at the art around the company's walls, and he mentioned to the owner, I noticed that you collect a lot of classical arts. And he said, yeah. He goes, I could do something for you real quick. And he stood in front of the owner with a pad, and he sketched the owner in kind of a format of one of the famous painters. And so as a result, it was done in pencil sketch, but he handed it to him and he goes, I would like to do this for you in oil. And the owner said, how much would it cost? And he said, well, actually, I could produce this for, and he gave him a price that I thought was exorbitant in those days, about $1,000. And the owner said, that would be interesting. Also, he said, I can do one that's large enough for you to fit in the entry of your home. And he said, how large is that? He said, it's a 6-foot by 3.5-foot painting. And it'll be absolutely gorgeous, and I'll even give you the painting before you pay me, just so you'll know it's good. And the guy said, okay. And he said, when can we do a sitting, or do I have photographs I could use? So the owner said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to get some photographs together. Why don't you come back and see me tomorrow? And the guy walked out with an appointment to come back with a closed order. Now, the interesting thing about that was he didn't take very long to do that at all. And he produced for the guy what looked like a Rembrandt, like a classical Rembrandt. It was fantastic. And I was sitting there in awe. So again, I've seen salesmen who use special talents. You want to develop your talent, you have something unique that you could do. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be sports, because I knew a guy years ago who was a salesman that could mention just about any player for the last 60 years in baseball or football. And that was a talent that really, really helped when it came down to people betting. It's like horse racing, okay? So find out what your talent is and get back to me. Join me in my seminar, which is called the Six-Figure Selling System, and I will show you how to utilize your talent as one of the gems of your sales presentation. Until then.